The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ocean Acidification Week 2021. We'll be getting started in just a moment. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ocean Acidification Week 2021. We're going to get started in just a moment. In the meantime, why doesn't everyone who is in attendance please write your name and your country of origin in the questions box. This way we could see where everyone's from. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ocean Acidification Week 2021. Depending where you are in the world, this is either the last session on Tuesday or the first session of Wednesday. My name is Michael Acquafredda. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program, and I'll be moderating today's session. This session is being recorded. OA Week is presented by 4 sponsoring organizations. First, GOHAN, the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Second, NOAA, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Third, the IAEA OAICC, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. And last but not least, the IOC UNESCO, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. GoOn is a collaborative international network designed to address 3 high-level goals. The first goal is to improve our understanding of global OA conditions. The second goal is to improve our understanding of ecosystem responses to OA. And the third goal is to acquire and exchange data and knowledge necessary to optimize modeling for OA and its impacts. GoOn was established in 2012 with just a handful of members. Since then, GoOn has grown immensely. It now has over 900 members from 105 countries. You can join GoOn today by visiting GOON.org. That's GOA-ON.org. GoOn also consists of 8 regional hubs, which span across continents and oceanographic basins. We'll be hearing from most of them throughout OA Week. GoOn is an active organization with numerous resources for its members. GoOn informs policy at the international level and is involved with initiatives such as the Commonwealth Blue Charter and Community of Ocean Action on OA. GoOn supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14, known as Life Below Water. Specifically, GoOn helped develop the methodology for SDG Indicator 14.3.1, providing guidance on how to measure ocean acidity and how to report that collected information. The data collected informs local and regional governments, as well as the UN climate programs. GoOn also hosts a data portal, which provides access and visualization to OA data and data synthesis products that are collected from around the world and from a variety of sources, including moorings, research cruises, and fixed time series stations. We welcome all scientists to submit their OA observations to our data portal. It's quick, it's easy, and it allows greater visibility of your work. Additionally, GoOn offers members scientific mentorship, scholarship, and hands-on training through the peer-to-peer program. If you are interested in joining the program as either a mentor or mentee, please visit the peer-to-peer website and enter your information into the application form. GoOn's newest resource is a webinar series, which was established following last year's Ocean Acidification Week. We welcome your input on what topics you would like to hear in future GoOn webinars. If you have any ideas, or if you want to contribute as a presenter yourself, then please send an email to secretariat@goon.org. But over the next 10 years, GoOn intends to go even further. GoOn has become involved with the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which will run from 2021 to 2030. This Ocean Decade will provide a common framework to ensure the ocean science can fully support countries to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. GoOn is proud to announce that our proposal, known as OARS, Ocean Acidification Research for Sustainability, was recently endorsed as an official UN Decade program. The OARS program will build on GoOn's existing work to further develop OA science by enhancing capacity efforts, increasing observations of ocean chemistry changes, identifying the impacts on marine organisms, and providing decision makers with the necessary information they need to mitigate and adapt to OA. GoOn would also like to bring attention to the 5th International Symposium on the Oceans in a High CO2 World. This conference was initially scheduled for September 2020, and like many events over the last 18 months, this event was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The symposium is now scheduled for 2022, and it will bring together researchers, decision makers, and stakeholders to share their cutting-edge OA science. We hope everyone listening today will visit the symposium website, and we invite everyone to stick around after this session until the end at the end of the session to watch a promotional video from the steering committee of the symposium. You won't want to miss it. And at this time, I'd like to introduce today's session, which is to introduce the new Pacific Islands Regional OA Training Hub and other upcoming capacity development activities. The session will begin with a welcome address from Dr. Isoa Korovulavula. Then we will hear from Dr. Katy Soapi and Dr. Kim Currie, who will discuss the Regional Training Hub. We'll then learn about an online training course provided through the Ocean Teachers Global Academy from Dr. Kaitlyn Lowder. And then we'll learn about opportunities for OA monitoring equipment to be granted to Pacific Islanders. Miss Alexis Valauri-Orton will talk to us about that. Then myself and Miss Meredith Kurz will talk about a Master's Student Fellowship that is specifically geared towards Pacific Islanders that NOAA will be offering over the next few months. And then finally, we hope to have a lively question and answer session with our community here today to discuss these capacity development activities, to gauge your feedback and garner opinions, and to see if we need to be steering in different directions. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Isoa Korovulavula, the Acting Director of the Institute of Applied Sciences at the University of the South Pacific. Dr. Isoa Korovulavula, please unmute yourself, turn your camera on, and share with us your address. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for that introduction, and also congratulate you of just going through the whole overview of this particular initiative, and thank GoOn on all the work they've done so far, not only for just Pacific countries, but for the entire planet that we are living in. I'd like to, first of all, greetings, and in Fijian we call Bulavinaga, to you all who's part of this particular webinar. And I'd also like to share on behalf of the Pacific Ocean Acidification Training Hub project team, which is made up of the Pacific community, the University of South Pacific, National Institute and Atmospheric Research, and the University of Otago, that we welcome you in this particular launching of this important initiative for the region, and that is the Ocean Acidification Capacity Building Hub. As we are well aware, the crises that have engulfed our world today manifest itself in various forms. It is complex. It's a complex problem, as normally some researchers normally identify it. Two of these forms so far threaten the very survival of the human race, and also causing a lot, including our natural environment and civilization. One of these viruses is ravaging deadly, which we are well aware, and that's why we're having all these virtual meetings. It's the COVID pandemic that we're experiencing. The second is the neglected or unknown negative externalities of development. The exponential rise of human global and greenhouse effect is the result of economic industrialization and is the root cause of the climate change impacts that we are experiencing at the moment. The other is the environmental degradation due to massive depletion of our natural resources. Today, we are actually looking at how acidification, sea level rise, and experiencing severe tropical cyclones put us, particularly our Pacific Island states, in extremely catastrophic situation in the near future. This initiative actually will help at least try to minimize this impact to us. Our most important resources, and this is something that we always look at the environment biodiversity, but one of the important resources here in the Pacific is our own people. Our future relies on how we can provide sound foundation for our present and future generation so they can be prudent and wise stewards of their natural resources. Hence, appropriate capacity building in the form of training of our young people, current professionals in government, civil societies, key community members, and those in tertiary institutions is probably one way we can strengthen our technical resilience to what the climate and environment crisis holds for us in the coming future. Training such as what this hub will be bringing is the beginning to help us cope with these challenges. Therefore, I hope you will enjoy the rest of the deliberations, and your input will be very much appreciated by the organizers as well as us. I wish you well in your deliberation as well as discussion this morning. Thank you.
Mike, you're muted.
No.
We still can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Apologies, my audio cut out during the welcome message. I was just saying thank you to Dr. Korovula for that really nice welcome message. And we all really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to speak with us today. So next, I'm going to invite Dr. Katy Soapi to turn on her camera and to unmute herself. And I'm going to share her slides. So give me one moment to just switch those over, and then you could begin. All right, Katy, take it away.
Thank you, Mike, and Bulavinaka, everybody. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm going to briefly talk about the new Pacific Island Regional Ocean Acidification Training Hub. My name is Katy Soapi. I'm the coordinator for Pacific Community Center for Ocean Science. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at the bigger picture. We are the blue Pacific continent. We are 24 Pacific Island countries and territories, 42 million people, 42 million square kilometers of ocean, and combined, we have about 30% of the world's EEZ. The term Blue Pacific captures the collective potential of our shared stewardship of the Pacific Ocean based on the recognition of our shared identity, ocean geography, and ocean resources. The core of the thinking around the Blue Pacific identity is about collective empowerment of Pacific people to determine their own development agenda. So the ocean is our largest asset in the Pacific. And there is just not enough or very little investment in ocean science. And we need ocean science data for informed decision for our development agenda in the Pacific. Next. So you might be wondering why SPC is involved here. One of the reasons, obviously, is that SPC is the region's hub for ocean science, technology, and innovation for development, sustainable development. It is owned by 26 Pacific Island countries and territories. It is home to PCOS and of the Pacific Community Center for Ocean Science. And one of the aims of PCOS is to help Pacific Island countries and communities easily access ocean science and expertise that they need to make informed decisions and to protect and sustainably manage ocean resources. So we have different levels of engagement internally with international partners and also with our member countries. And our work is driven basically by the regional agenda and what our member countries wanted or are interested in terms of their priority areas and issues. Next slide, please. And so this is where ocean acidification is a very, very important issue for the Pacific. Here you can see the need for monitoring and ocean acidification and its impacts on marine ecosystem has been well recognized at different levels, international, regional, and even the national levels. So I just wanted to draw your attention particularly at the regional level. We have the Pohnpei Ocean Statement and the Framework for Pacific Oceanscape calling especially for investment in science and research and highlights the need to minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification. And in fact, there's a number of national ocean policies being developed and launched across the Pacific that specifically highlights the need to also address the impacts of climate change and that of ocean acidification. So we are, in this case, not working in a vacuum. We have the regional call to address ocean acidification in the Pacific. Next slide, please. And so ocean acidification obviously forms through the ocean absorbing carbon dioxide and dissolving with seawater, and this alters the ocean chemistry. And the ocean is becoming more acidic. It's more acidic, 30% more acidic than it was 200 years ago. And the more carbon dioxide that is produced globally leads to higher levels of ocean acidification. And this has huge implications for coral reefs, shellfish, our food security, biodiversity, tourism, and our fisheries as well. Next slide, please. And here you can see that it has a huge economic cost as well. It's projected cost per year to the world economy is 1.2 trillion by 2100. For the Pacific Island countries and territories, this means threat to our livelihood, our food security, and our well-being. Here are just photos of some of the livelihoods that will be impacted if ocean acidification impacts are felt in the Pacific. And as you can see, these are just photos that were taken from the Suva market here, and people depend on the ocean for their livelihood. Next slide, please. And so I'd just like to take a step back to give a brief background to how this all started. So in 2019, there was a workshop that was held at USP by a number of partners, of course, Ocean Foundation, involvement of other partners like NOAA, SPC, SPREP, and USP. And in this workshop, we had regional participants across the Pacific that also attended this workshop, a training workshop on ocean acidification. Following that training, a grant was given on GoOn kits, and these kits, some of this will be talked about later. But there were 6 Pacific Island countries that benefited from this grant through the Ocean Foundation. Following the awards, there was a follow-up workshop, a training workshop in 2018 in Hawaii. And after that workshop, it was still realized that we need to have more data. We need to help more Pacific Island countries to be able to do monitoring, and we need to build the capacity. And following this as well, we formed, there was the formation of the Pacific Islands Territories Ocean Acidification Network. Again, this will be talked about later. But some of the kits that were given were then taken by countries, and some of the monitoring started. Next slide, please. So here you will see across the Pacific in orange there, we had countries that benefited from this initial grant and have GoOn kits that they are either using or currently they are probably waiting for further funding or work to continue the monitoring. But this just to show that there is some level of monitoring already happening across the Pacific through the use of these GoOn kits. And then in yellow there, you will see other areas where there's monitoring. Obviously, we have our big brothers and sisters from Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii who have done this for many, many years. And this is definitely not an exhaustive list, and I may have missed out some of the monitoring that's also happening. But again, this is where we need to bring in more groups into the PTOA network to do more collective ocean acidification monitoring and through like coordinated effort. Next slide, please. Following this, USP was afforded a project. This will be discussed tomorrow, so I won't really go into much detail. I just wanted to show that we had some initial monitoring happened here in Fiji. So the project had 3 components. One was to look at ocean acidification monitoring, and then this is to try and pilot a project where we incorporate blue carbon restoration to see whether it can mitigate ocean acidification. So the second part of the project was to do mangrove planting, blue carbon restoration in this case, and the last component was on a verified carbon standard measurements of soil carbon pools for coastal mangrove restoration. And that part of the project has not been as the capacity is still being developed in in this third component. So here you will see where the project took place. So it's to the north of the main island of Viti Levu. We had an area that we planted, as you can see in the map, and just outside of this map, this planted area is the site for monitoring, which is shown in that orange triangle. Next slide, please. Hey, green triangle, sorry. So here's just some photos of some of the nurturing of the mangrove seedling, the replanting, to show the engagement with the community and the mangrove restoration work. We planted over 6,000 plants, and this is just to highlight the partnership we have with the community and the restoration work. Next slide, please. Again, here's a photo from the monitoring part. So we deployed the ISAMI. We also collected discrete water samples, which were then analyzed in the lab, and the data was collated, and this was sent to IOC earlier part of this year. Next slide, please. And here's just a very quick result from the ISAMI. Again, I won't talk about this. It's just to show the correlation between high temperature, obviously that's high photosynthesis, so you have high pH values, and then low pH values overnight through respiration, and leading to high acidity overnight. But again, I won't go into details, as this will be discussed in a separate presentation. But this is just to show some of the work that have happened. Next slide, please. So leading on from that, earlier this year, there was another call for proposals to host a regional training hub for ocean acidification. And this was by the Ocean Foundation and NOAA. And so a number of the partners in the Pacific, we decided perhaps we shouldn't really try and compete against each other, but put together and work together and look at our strength, where we can actually come together and apply for this regional hub. And so with the SPC leading on the data analysis and management, hosting the Pacific Data Hub, and being a regional center for the OTGA courses, and also PCOS, USP with it all, its academic laboratory and the chemist. NOAA and University of Otago have experts and technical advisors who can help, and being part of the Commonwealth Charter, we decided to put together and apply for this regional hub. Next slide, please. And so that's where we finally we put in the proposal. It was accepted, and so now we are in the process of organizing the grant, and we are putting together the terms of reference, the grant, and everything that will go into establishing this regional hub. But the role of this hub, as I'd like to share, is to host training centers, training to develop and support regional expertise in monitoring ocean acidification and other variables where needed through the use of this GoOn kit in a box. And there will be training workshops, which will be talked about a bit later. The hub will also house and maintain research equipment, including spare parts for training researchers on ocean acidification monitoring in the Pacific Island, including the distribution of the spare parts and the equipment. The hub will also provide ongoing training support for monitoring program across the Pacific, hopefully along in the near future through a mentor-mentee approach of monitoring, and assist and support groups that are doing data collection and ocean acidification monitoring activities, data management in collaboration with NIWA, Otago University, and all our other external partners. And an important part is also to ensure that ocean acidification monitoring data from the region is made accessible through established OA data portals. So the hub itself will have 3 part-time personnel, project manager, a chemist, and a data management, and all of this thanks to the Ocean Foundation and NOAA in this. And continue working with that project, including, as I've shown in the map, a number of old kit recipients across the Pacific and potentially new grant recipients from what we'll hear a bit later. There's also Korean Institute of Ocean Science and Technology. They've been doing a lot of work, particularly in Palau, FSM, and Samoa. We potentially can link up with them. The Commonwealth Marine Economies Program has done some work in Fiji as well. And the PAC-IO, Pacific Island Ocean Observation System, it would be really good to link up to what they're doing, particularly in the North.
Hello. Can you still hear me okay? We were having some audio problems at the very end there.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'm happy my connection was restored. Was everyone able to hear the end of Katy's presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, at this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. Kaitlyn Lowder. Actually, excuse me. Next, Kim Currie might have a few words to say about the Regional Training Hub before we jump in. Kim doesn't have any slides, so I'll keep this up here. And Kim, you can take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Kia ora, everyone, and bula vanaka to friends and colleagues from all around the Pacific and around the world. Thanks, Dr. Asoa, for that introduction, and Katy for that really good overview of ocean acidification, the history of the monitoring in the Pacific, and the lead up to the development of the training centre. So it's great. I'm really proud to be working with this really wonderful, talented and dedicated team from really interested in ocean acidification. One of my projects involves working with a variety of partners throughout New Zealand to measure and observe ocean acidification around the New Zealand of global and international action and advocacy on climate change. And this new training centre will help to increase that capacity around ocean acidification action. I've worked with GOA-ON in the Ocean Foundation previously to help with upskilling Pacific scientists to develop ocean acidification capability, and in particular I was involved with the training course in Suva a couple of years ago that Katy's already mentioned, and I met some of you there. I've also worked with helping to develop practical best practices, a suite of protocols that's suitable for up and coming labs to set up their own ocean acidification program. And I've worked with the development of methodology for the Sustainable Development Goal number 14.3 indicator on ocean acidification measuring and reporting. New Zealand is the ocean acidification champion of the Commonwealth Blue Charter. And several years ago, we held a meeting in New Zealand, and I met some of you in Dunedin then. I've also worked with Dr. Christina McGraw from the University of Otago, who's also part of this training centre team, to produce a policymaker's handbook for addressing the impacts of ocean acidification. And that's a great resource. I encourage you all to access it and use it. So there's a bit of a history of interaction between New Zealand OA scientists and Pacific Island ocean acidification scientists. It's a great privilege for me to work with this wider team. My role in this centre is going to be primarily as a mentor, particularly in the chemistry and data management areas. Currently, I'm one of the co-chairs of PI TOA, the local GOA-ON hub that Katy also mentioned. So I'd just like to
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Hi, can everyone hear me okay? I'm having some audio problems on my end, but Kaitlyn, if you could hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Seems like Kaitlyn cannot hear me, unfortunately, so I'm going to just write.
Some of the slides that I'll be using today. Next slide, please. All right, funding for this work comes from the U.S. Department of State and through a partnership with NOAA. I'd also like to recognize the great partnership that you've just heard about that forms the regional training hub. I'd also like to thank the working group that's been working on this project, including some of the speakers that are here presenting today, as well as many other experts that have been so generous with sharing their time and expertise and feedback on this project and our training plan. Next slide, please. So we're offering 2 trainings through the hub in the near future. An online training, which I'll talk about most throughout this session. So I'll just briefly say that the goal is to learn about everything from oceanification, top to bottom. Carbonate chemistry basics, running biological experiments, how to monitor ocean conditions in the field. We anticipate that it will begin in December or January of this year, early next year. And really anyone with an interest in addressing oceanification is welcome to attend. The hands-on training is more advanced and it builds on the foundational knowledge from this online training. The focus is really how to get weather quality data, using sensors deployed in the field, and analytical techniques for measuring discrete samples in the lab, which Alexis will talk about more. Because it's held at the hub in Suva, Fiji, we'll take into account the COVID situation, the risk for lockdowns, etc., so that all accepted attendees can safely attend. And because it's in person with limited equipment and limited space, they'll be limited to a small group of attendees who are receiving equipment for oceanification research, either to begin programs or build on their existing work. And a prerequisite is successfully completing the entire online training course. So keep that in mind as we continue talking about the online training. Next slide, Mike. So who can join this session? Likely you, if you're attending and listening here today. Researchers of all different stages and fields are welcome, ranging from undergraduates, grad students, early career researchers, even distinguished professors who are learning more about oceanification. It will be particularly relevant for chemical oceanographers who are looking to measure carbonate chemistry, or biologists who are seeking to understand the impacts of oceanification on local organisms. But as we know, many different researchers can contribute to the OA field, including economists and social scientists who are helping understand some of these impacts to the larger sphere outside of the biology, the chemistry. So they're welcome to attend as well. Ocean data managers are welcome, who may be curious about what total alkalinity or dissolved inorganic carbon in the headers of data sheets that come across their desk, what those mean. Or perhaps they're looking and incorporating that into some of the data that they submit to different databases. Of course, resource managers are also welcome. It'd be helpful for understanding the impacts to fisheries or other ecosystems that are important to the region for tourism or other non-consumptive uses. And then addressing oceanification with policy is so important. So governmental representatives who are interested in learning more about this threat to their local environment and how they can address it are welcome to attend as well. I'll note that we have sort of designed this course, so not necessarily everyone has to attend the entire course. For example, a governmental representative may not need to know how to design a biological experiment, so they're welcome to attend the sessions that are most relevant to them. But of course, these are wonderful lectures, and so we recommend attending the full course if possible. And remember, if you do want that kit, you'll need to complete the entire set of modules, which I'll go into. Next slide, please. So the online course is based on an Ocean Teacher Global Academy ocean acidification course that's forthcoming. OTGA is a wonderful resource from the IOC with lots of training courses on different topics. We're really excited about this OA course that's coming out. Can you click one more time, please? So there's 7 modules that comprise the OTGA OA course. Participants will gain an understanding of oceanification, causes, chemical changes, effects on marine organisms and the global ocean, how to measure it, how to plan to make observations in the field and do experiments in the lab, and the political responses to the threat of OA on the global, regional, and local scale. One more slide, please. Wonderful. So the content of each module is broken up into a couple different components. The first are pre-recorded lectures, which have been developed by experts in advance. And what's wonderful about this is, given attendees' likely busy schedules, you can watch these pre-recorded lectures when it's convenient to you throughout the week that module is covered. There's also recommended reading material that goes along with each different topic, so attendees can learn more about the background of this certain topic in the field. What have we learned about biological responses over time? Or if you have questions about a particular piece of the lecture, there'll be the ability to read into that further. There are quizzes associated with each module as well. So as attendees, you can test your understanding of what you've learned for the lectures and maybe dig into more reading if the results quite aren't what you expected. And then a component that I'm really excited about are these live discussion sessions, which is really unique to this run of the Ocean Teacher Global Academy course. This is an opportunity to join in with other attendees and experts to get your questions answered if something still isn't making sense about a certain topic. We'll also have some discussion questions where attendees can think about how each lecture is really relevant to the region. So coral reef ecosystems are incredibly important. What does it mean to understand the variability in an environment like that, where conditions can change over the course of a day or week or so? That's just an example. And then there'll be the opportunity to work on integrating all this knowledge into a research plan of your own to begin an oceanification monitoring project, which will lead into an application to apply for a kit for equipment. Next slide, please. So I'll go into a little bit more about what each module covers, just so you get a sense of what's fully encompassed in this course. The first module is from Christina McGraw, who's giving an introduction to oceanification. What is the chemistry of oceanification? What are some of the impacts that we know about how it affects biological organisms? And then how are the different ways that we can measure it? Next slide, please. Module 2 is covered by Chris Sabine, who goes into the ocean carbonate system. So what are the different variables in the carbonate system? Bicarbonate, carbonate, the different parameters like total alkalinity or dissolved inorganic carbon. And then how do you choose which ones to measure given the instrumentation or your research questions or what you want to calculate at the end given the data that you have. Next slide, please. In Module 3, Adrian Sutton goes through data quality and management. So data quality assurance and quality control principles and how to apply them to the data that you've collected. How to detect issues and correct those along the way. And associated with this are also papers in which they describe data quality assurance and data quality principles, just give a whole understanding of this topic and how to eventually submit your oceanification data for the whole global OA community. Next slide, please. Following along with that is a module from the IOC, Kirsten and Katerina, who are discussing the SDG 14.3.1 indicator methodology in relation to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 14, which is life below water. and really honing in on target 14.3, which is reducing oceanification. So the module covers what this indicator is, how to collect data and submit it to this great database. The lecture also contains associated files and templates and manuals, so attendees will be up and ready to submit their data with the conclusion of the course. Next module, or next slide, sorry. In Module 5, which is my personal favorite, Sam DuPont gives a lecture on laboratory experiments for oceanification, discussing what to consider when planning and carrying out oceanification experiments, given your space constraints, the tools that you have, your research questions, the biological perspectives in experiments. What sort of responses do you want to measure, survival or growth or something a little bit more complex? And then how to manipulate the carbonate chemistry in the lab to produce these future ocean conditions. Next slide, please. In Module 6, Adrienne Sutton is back again talking about chemical observations in the field to introduce monitoring strategies. This is an image of an ice SAMI and a coral reef environment. So how do you put in these sensors to measure long-term changes and capture variability that tells you more about the environment? Next slide. The last module is from Helen Finley, who's talking about biological observations in the field and the approach to monitor for oceanification impacts, such as this image with pteropods right here, to understand changes in calcification, impacts to primary and secondary producers, biodiversity, community structure, genetic adaptation. So no matter what kind of biologist you are, there's piece of this lecture that will be interesting to you and helping understand how you can study oceanification in the field. One more slide, please. All right, so a little bit more about the course timeline. So we anticipate covering each of these modules in 1 week. So the whole course will likely be over 7 or 8 weeks or so, with an anticipated start date either as early as November perhaps, but more likely this December or January. And that's partly because the OTGA course isn't quite online yet. It's a lot of work to put that out there. And we're also going to be working around class schedules and other commitments, busy attendees and instructors as well. But because it is spread out over this long time period, it really allows a lot of flexibility for you as attendees to fit into your schedule, to watch those pre-recorded lectures when it's most convenient to you. And then we'll schedule the discussion sessions at a time that are most convenient for everyone to join in and have that conversation together. So further information about dates and information for registration will be announced as soon as possible. One more slide, please. So in the meantime, you can visit our website at Ocean Foundation, which is abbreviated to fdn.org/register. And here we have a training flyer, which will give you a little bit more information about what I've covered today. And check back at that for further information about dates and registration information. And if you heard about GOA-ON Week, you'll likely be hearing about this training course as well. We'll use some of those same channels to share more information. So if you're interested, just keep your ears open for more information. Thank you so much.
Hi, Kaitlyn, can you hear me okay? Or Alexis, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. I was having some connectivity issues earlier, but they seem to have resolved themselves. So I just want to take this time to quickly thank Katy and Kim and Kaitlyn for those wonderful presentations. And without any further ado, I'll pass it over to Alexis Valauri-Orton.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everyone. I'm getting more excited about this project just hearing each of you talk. I'm going to cover the kits and what they are, how we're going to go about distributing them, and how you could be awarded one. Next slide, please. So as part of this broader project that we're doing that involves the creation of this regional training hub, the delivery of technical training, we also are able, thanks to the funding we received from NOAA, to distribute equipment. Our funding at this time is limited to these specific countries that are listed. We are optimistic that we might receive additional funding that would allow us to award equipment to people within the Pacific from countries aside from these that are listed. So I would say if you don't see yourself on this list, just keep in touch and we'll let you know if anything changes. There will be a total of 7 kits that are distributed. Now, 2 of those are going to the regional training hub to be permanent resources for the community to practice using this equipment, and 5 will be distributed to applicants from these eligible countries. In order to apply to receive a kit, you must attend all 7 course modules. And so if you are interested or you know a researcher who may be interested, it's very important that they register for the course. There will also be an application package, and it will be made available before the course begins, because in many ways, the course will be an opportunity to prepare your application. The most important part of the application is a research plan, where you say what you will use the kit to do. And essentially all of the modules give you that background information that you need to design the most effective research plan. And the live discussion sessions have a lot of opportunity for feedback, and they will be a place for you to say, well, I'm interested in monitoring this type of a lagoon or this type of a reef system. How often do I need to do that? What's the best set of equipment to use? Should I use more sensors or bottle samples? So again, just another plug for the course. Next slide, please. So what is the GoOn in a Box kit? So this kit was designed by a whole group of partners, many of whom are on the call today and who you may have heard from at other points in OA Week. Us at the Ocean Foundation, GoOn, the IAEA OA-ICC hosted us in Monaco to actually develop the kit, and IOC played a large role in this as well. The goal of the kit is to allow those who have limited access to oceanographic instrumentation or facilities the ability to collect high quality ocean acidification data. And specifically, the kit includes everything that you need to collect weather quality, pH, and alkalinity measurements. The term weather quality is a technical term that is the specifications for that quality level are in the GoOn implementation plan, which is on the GoOn website. But essentially, it's meant to really allow you to observe short-term trends or dynamic ecosystems, so more coastal areas. Weather quality wouldn't be sufficient to measure small changes over long periods of time. That's climate quality data. Now, as I mentioned, this is meant to be kind of all-encompassing. And so it only requires that you have access to electricity and seawater. Everything else is included. It's designed to be modular, meaning lots of small pieces that are put together rather than kind of a black box that if it breaks, the whole thing is hard to repair. So it's supposed to be, easy to repair and inexpensive to replace parts. And again, there will be spare parts available in Fiji that are all of the common things that might break, glassware or electrodes or things like that. There's also a standardized set of methods for how to use this kit designed by GoOn scientists. It will be officially published soon, but our kit recipients have all the kind of beta versions of the procedures. And another important thing is that there's currently 17 institutions around the world that are using this kit. And so there's this strong community of practice. There's actually a group within the OA Info Exchange about the kit. So there's a good kind of community that you would be joining if you received a kit. And I wanted to just tell you about the picture that I have on the top right. You might be wondering, what is all that stuff? And it's just an example of what we mean by comprehensive. So the items you see in that picture are things that are needed to repair and maintain the pH sensor that's included in the kit. Now that is not typically something that the developer of that sensor sells, because most of their current customers are in, Woods Hole or the Pacific Marine Environmental Lab in Seattle or other places that have easy access to all sorts of little things. But in many places, it could be really hard to find the exact plastic fitting that is used to screw on to the intake valve, or the exact type of grease that you need for the O-rings. And so basically, we asked the producer of the sensor to put everything that would be required to do basic maintenance into a box and sell it to us. And so this is a maintenance kit that we designed, the Ocean Foundation, in partnership with the technology developer for our kit recipients. All right, next slide. Now I'm going to go through what exactly is in the kit in a bit more concrete terms, and you might see some familiar faces here from our training in Fiji in 2017 and Hawaii in 2018. So first of all, we want to enable you to collect water samples, and that means using particular glass that's non-reactive with the seawater, and having the right preservative and the right kind of stoppers and such to seal the bottles nicely so that they can be shelf stable and sit on the shelf for even months if you need to before you analyze them. Next slide. And then one of the things that you can analyze from the bottle samples is the pH. And we use a rugged spectrophotometer that is, has a screen built into it, doesn't require a computer to be plugged into it. We provide the pipettes, the micropipettes, the pH indicator dye, and everything that you would need to measure the pH of individual samples. Next slide. To analyze the alkalinity, we use a manual titration setup that was developed by Andrew Dixon and Chris Sabine. And the purpose of this is, first of all, it's low cost and easy to replace. If one part breaks, again, the spare parts inventory will be there for you. But it gives you very, very good data. And so the kit contains all of the components that you need to do this analysis. Next slide, please. And then, of course, sensors to enable you to measure the chemistry in situ. I mentioned that we use a pH, sensor, and the one that is currently in our kit is the iSAMI pH sensor from Sunburst Sensors. This won the X Prize competition a number of years ago. There was an international competition to develop the lowest cost and most effective pH sensor, and this was the sensor that won. We also have a low cost CTD that's very small that is included in the kit, and these can be deployed together to continuously and autonomously collect data. Next slide. And then finally, you need to then calculate the full carbonate chemistry from all that data. And so the kit includes computers and the software needed to actually calculate and determine all aspects of the water's carbonate chemistry, and also gives you the templates, right, that you need to upload that data to international data services like the SDG 14.3 data portal. Next slide, please. So we don't just, drop this equipment and then walk away. We are very interested in your success as a researcher, as a resource manager. And so each kit recipient will receive travel and lodging to a 1-week in-person technical training, which you just heard about from Kaitlyn. Also a 2-year stipend to support part-time staff time. A mentor through the peer-to-peer program whose research interests are similar to yours. Regular check-ins with TOF staff and all of our partners to answer any questions that you might have. I still get questions from the kit recipients from Mauritius that I worked with in 2016, and I'm still always talking to people and helping them continue to reach their research goals. And then, of course, we will always be on the lookout for more funding and training opportunities and point you towards any opportunities that we think would help you reach your goals. Next slide, please. Finally, the place to check for updates on how to apply for the kit is the same place that you check to register for the course. So that's oceanfdn.org/register. And we will be posting all application materials to that page. And again, it will also be advertised widely through the GoOn Facebook group page, through the OAIE, Twitter, and other avenues. So with that, I want to say thank you so much and turn it back to Mike, who will actually be sharing the final presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Alexis, for that overview of the kits and how to get one. And at this time, I'll invite my colleague, Meredith Kurz from NOAA to join me on with her camera. Hi, Meredith. Meredith's just setting up her headphones.
There we go. Hi,
Excellent.
everyone.
So Meredith and I are just going to run through an opportunity that NOAA and the U.S. Department of State have for master's students in the Pacific Islands region. So in addition to the funding that was able to support the regional training hub and the kits, there was also additional funding that we're using to fund students and the next generation of OA researchers. So the Master's Student Fellowship, as we're calling it, is an opportunity that's going to be available this year. Each award will consist of between $16,000 and $32,000 US dollars. So you can think of that as about 32,000 to 64,000 Fiji dollars. And it's intended to fund a master's degree for a full 2 years, including tuition, the student's stipend, the research budget to conduct the master's research, and other kind of additional fees and costs. So overall, NOAA has about 200,000 US dollars to fund approximately 3 to 6 awards. Master's students need to design a research project, and the research must fill critical gaps in physical or chemical oceanographic, biological, or socioeconomic knowledge of OA and its impacts specifically in the Pacific region. And we at NOAA and also our colleagues in this Pacific Islands Capacity Working Group came up with these goals for this fellowship. And ultimately, we want this funding to be able to support early career scientists to provide the Pacific region with new OA research and observation expertise. And we also want to provide the communities of the Pacific Island region with more data, more information, and more resources so that they're able to build more resilience against OA and its impacts. I'm going to tag Meredith here, and maybe she could talk about eligibility.
Thanks, Mike. So we are going to give priority to citizens or residents of the countries listed here. This is a stipulation of our funding. And ideally, we would like the awards to go to folks who are living or working in these countries. If you are enrolled in a university outside of these countries, but conducting research that will benefit them and be focused on their environments, you may also apply. However, as we've said, priority will be given to those early career scientists living and working in these countries. You must be either currently enrolled in a master's degree program or able to show us that you have applied for one. And you will be applying through your university. And so that's one reason why we're sharing this information with you now, because it can take some time to talk with potential advisors and think what you might do. I think those are the main points on eligibility.
Yeah, I think that about covers it. So in this second to last slide is just a last little bit of information. So We're still finalizing the all the details for the competition, and that's expected to be published formally in October. And the formal publication of this fellowship, all the guidelines and the application material, that's going to be posted primarily on grants.gov. So that's a U.S. government grants website. Additionally, we will be posting a PDF copy of the application or of the solicitation on the OAP websites, on the GoOn websites, and also on the OA Info Exchange. And we'll also be using listservs, so the GoOn listserv, the PI-TOA listserv. So if you received emails about OA Week, you probably will hear about this fellowship too. So there's actually a two-part application process. The first is a letter of intent that applicants will need to submit by November or December. And the exact date will depend on when the full application details are published. Probably about 6 weeks after that's published. And the letters of intent are really short. It's just a 2-pager. And one of the pages is really just kind of a cover slide. And really we're using that to help guide likely applicants and kind of steer those who we suspect will be top applicants and help them kind of narrow their focus a little bit. So it really will save potential applicants time in the long run. And then the full proposals are going to be due early next year. And those are a little bit more comprehensive. So those will include a research plan, a personal statement, data management plan. So it'll take a bit more work. And because of that workload, we decided to have the letter of intent stage. And ultimately, if you have additional questions, you could email me or Meredith or Erica Ambres, which Erica is a colleague of both of ours at OAP. Her email address is here, and we will be really happy to answer any questions you may have. And if you have additional questions right now, please post those into the questions box and we'll do our best to answer them today during our question and answer session. But before we get to that, I do just want to post this one slide that contains all of the information Meredith and I just ran through. You might be able to see that there's a screenshot button on your GoToWebinar browser. Go ahead and screenshot this page if you're interested in applying for this fellowship or know someone who is. But again, we will be providing more details about this over the next few weeks. So with that, I will close this presentation and open up our last presentation. And at this time, I will ask all of our panelists to turn their cameras on, and we could do a question and answer session for the next 10 or 15 minutes, the remainder of our session. And while everyone's turning on their cameras, I'm going to step away for just a moment and check our questions box. If you have specific questions for one of our panelists, please mention that in your question so we know who to direct your question to. And if it's for everyone in the group, you could just use the @ symbol and then all, so we know it's kind of a broader question. Okay. So one question I'm receiving is from Noah Howens, who is from the University of Hawaii. And he's asking Meredith and me, are students limited to study in their home countries or can they study abroad?
You want me to take that one?
Sure.
If you are a citizen of Fiji and you're studying in Tuvalu, that's fine. If you're a citizen of the US and you're studying in Tuvalu, that's fine. You could be studying at any university as long as the research benefits the countries that were on that list. We will give priority to people who are living or working in a country on that list. But you don't need to be a citizen of Fiji working in Fiji, for example.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so our next question has to do with the training, and this comes from Nime Salesa. They want to know, is there a fee for participating in the training?
That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking for clarification on that. There is no fee for participating, so you're able to attend without any cost, which is something that we really believe in promoting. You know, of course, we want to build our oceanification community, and so that's why we're able to put it forward without any fee for attending.
And another question by this individual is, how can participants in the Pacific countries get the invitation or registration link to attend the training? So I know, Kaitlyn and Alexis, you had it in your slides. Perhaps one of you can chat it to Kerri or me, and then we could chat it to everyone.
Definitely, I'll throw the link in the chat. But again, it's going to be oceanfoundation.org/register, where we'll have more information about the training. You can find the training flyer there now. There'll be more information about the kit application. And then, of course, we'll continue to put it out through GOA-ON channels and other avenues as well.
So I see another question that just came in. And it's direct. I'm going to direct this to Alexis. The question is, if you're from a country that wasn't on that list, but you're interested in obtaining a GoOn in the box kit, what should you do?
So I think the first thing is you should attend the training, right? Because no matter what country you're from, to be eligible for a kit, you need to attend this training. Then I would say keep an eye out. Well, I think during the training, we will be communicating very regularly about any updates we have about the kits. I would say also keep an eye on the registration page, because any new eligibility information we have, we will post there. And then, of course, you can always reach out directly to me or Kaitlyn. And our contact information may not be on our website. So I'm on the OA Info Exchange. That's a good way to get a hold of me.
Absolutely.
So you can mention me there or message me there. But, you know, I think that we have some promising leads on some additional kits. And so we're hopeful that those will not have the same limitations as our current funding in terms of where they can be distributed. I will say that this project is focused in the Pacific Islands. And so we're really only going to be offering kits in the Pacific Islands for this project. That said, the Ocean Foundation has projects in multiple regions. We also have a current project in the Gulf of Guinea that has a separate but very similar program underway. Those are our two active programs. We are always looking to start, you know, additional regional programs. And so if you're not based in the Pacific, you also can feel free to reach out and, you know, let us know, hey, you know, I'm based in, you know, Southeast Asia, or I'm based in the Caribbean, you know, what opportunities are there? And we will let you know as soon as we have any opportunities there.
And I want to kind of ask a related follow-up question to you and Kaitlyn. This one comes from Denise Perez, and I know that she's from the Commonwealth of the Mariana Islands. Denise wants to know, will there be future training opportunities to support individuals in expanding local capacity efforts? So I know there's the regional, the virtual training, and then there's going to be a training specific for those who receive kits, but is there anything else planned?
So the beautiful thing about the Ocean Teacher Global Academy course is that it is freely available and always online. We are just giving the very first iteration of it, and it is self-paid. There will be an opportunity to take it on your own. We are providing like extra resources through this training with the live discussions. Those are not available online because they're live, right? So in the future though, anyone can freely take that course. There is always training. There are always training opportunities, whether they're through the Ocean Foundation or through IAEA that have training opportunities, through the IOC, through some regional groups like LAUCA, which is the Latin America hub, runs their own trainings locally. And then of course, we are really hopeful that the hub will be able to secure additional funding to host additional trainings in the future. I think the other thing is that we really hope that anyone who goes through our training programs feels comfortable then training their partners, students, other researchers in their country, so that, they can kind of spread the knowledge. I don't know if Kaitlyn wants to weigh in about the online training, or if Katy wants to say anything about the hub and the role the hub will have. Kaitlyn's shaking her head, so. Katy, anything you want to say about the hub?
I think from the hub perspective, as it's all quite new at the moment, so we'll have those initial 2 trainings together with the Ocean Foundation and NOAA, and the additional support that comes with that. But looking ahead, we are hoping that the regional hub will be able to build capacity across the region as well, maybe through a peer-to-peer mentoring program that's already, established under GoOn, and how best to work closely with them or in collaboration with them to identify needs in the Pacific and Pacific monitoring that's going on that needs extra training, maybe extra capacity, and because we are working with USP as well. So one of the things we've been thinking of as well is perhaps if there's a specific student from a certain country who's maybe in their 3rd year or doing graduate studies, they can partner up with projects in their country, but then get that extra training while they are at USP using the training kit. And as part of the hub, we can provide those ad hoc training opportunities. If they say travel through Fiji and need extra help, then they can stop by for an additional week, spend a week or so in Fiji and get some specific training, based on what their need is and where they need that specific capacity to be built. So I think all of these ideas that we are currently looking at and how best to action them as well. Thank you.
And I'll just add one other thing. We really want to kind of build the community kind of just beyond the few folks who receive training, who receive kits. And I think one way to do that is kind of by building out the Piatoa regional hub of GoOn, and also communicating more on the ocean acidification information exchange. Those are really good resources. So, people can share notes or their thoughts and opinions after reviewing some of the modules on the OTGA courses, or troubleshoot together online. So I think one of the kind of overarching goals of this entire effort is to build unity within the community, and that is for anyone living in any island, state, or country territory in the region, not just those that we listed.
I also wanted to note, that there's so many things in this program, we couldn't pack it all in, but there's actually funding in this program to pay for inter-island travel for these ad hoc trainings. So there will be a process once we kind of get the hub up and running and they feel ready to take on, you know, kind of students on a bit of an ad hoc basis. There will be a process to apply to receive travel grants to go and stay in Fiji. And there's wonderful student housing and kind of visitor housing at USP that makes it very easy to do this and have that opportunity. So again, we're trying to make it all fully funded so that people can really take advantage of this. There will also be peer-to-peer scholarship funding that's set aside for the Pacific Islands that also can be used to pay for research expenses and other things, as well as travel.
Isoa, you turned your camera on. Do you have anything to add? I think you're muted.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. No, what I'm just wondering is, because I mean, in the Pacific, particularly the scarcity of islands within even one nation is quite wide. So depends on where the student is coming from and where he or she wants to do her studies on. It's the cost. You know, Katy knows about the costing within the traveling. It just sometimes could be quite enormous. But then again, hopefully we'll be able to travel to even in Fiji within the outer islands. Eh? We want to do some studies out of the main island to the other islands too. So just that point I want to raise in terms of the scarcity, the isolation of the islands from the main island. Yeah, thanks. That's all.
Yeah, I think, again, the travel funding hopefully will allow that because, yeah, even within a country, I lived in the Cook Islands for a little while and I know how expensive it was to get to the Northern Islands. So it can be a very big challenge. And the other thing is that we're also partnering with a group based in Europe that's using satellite data for ocean acidification monitoring and kind of coming up with best practices. So that could be another tool that could enable some level of research in these kind of remote outer islands that maybe they still can do a research trip and collect some samples, but they might only have to go once to validate the satellite data rather than go multiple times. So that's another.
And assuming it's the same group, we might be hearing from them later in the week as one of our plenary sessions for OA Week 2021. So stick around on
ESA Soda.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, please go to the OA Week 2021 webpage and register for that session. But we still have a couple more questions. I know we're approaching our time, but I think these are really important questions, so I want to get to them quickly. So one of them was from Joshua Dem, and Joshua asked, who exactly can apply for the GoOn in a Box kits? Is it an organization or a research group, or can it be an existing PhD student, for example, like on an individual level?
Very, very good question. So you will need a letter of support from your institution. We have given kits to PhD students in the past, but the kit itself will belong to the institution because the idea is that it needs to kind of be there in a permanent way and kind of live on. So sometimes there have been examples where students early in their PhD have applied, and then their research plan really is the research plan of their PhD. And then they have kind of successfully completed that research and then sort of trained other people at the institution to take that on. We also have awarded the kit to government employees who are, particularly in the Pacific Islands where there's a lot of work done by government agencies. That's another group. So there has to be an institution associated with the applicant, and there has to be a letter of support from that institution. but there is a little bit of flexibility in terms of what your role is, whether you're a current student or you know, someone in government, someone in a nonprofit setting, etc.
Okay, and similarly with the kits, we mentioned that there will be 7 available and 2 that will be designated for the regional training hub. But does this mean that if there's a researcher in another part of Fiji, it's unlikely that that person would get a kit because there's already 2 stationed in Fiji, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think that you know, there's going to be basically the criteria that we typically evaluate the kits by is the strength of the research plan and the likelihood that the application kind of will be successful, right? We want to see that there's the right kind of infrastructure and personality and a dedication to the project, and that it will fill a data gap that exists. And so there, like, you know, Dr. Isoa said, Fiji isn't just, you know, the island that Suva's on. There's many other islands part of Fiji, and then of course, same with many Pacific countries. So I don't think that we can say, you know, with a blanket, oh, that there'll only be this per country. Now, that said, the decision will be made by a collective working group that includes representation from the Pacific Islands, from NOAA, from our funders and our partners. But we will be very clear about the criteria in the application information. We'll tell you exactly what the applications will be scored on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alexis. Another question comes from Danny Sadrick, and Danny wants to know, wants to know about the Master's Fellowship, and Danny asks, can individuals who are based at U.S. institutions or Australian or New Zealand institutions apply for this? And the answer is yes. So you don't need to be based at an institution in the Pacific Islands. But as you mentioned earlier, we are giving priority to citizens, nationals, and residents of the designated countries. And we also are giving priority to people who will be doing research that is taking place in those countries. So if you're a Samoan attending University of Hawaii and your research takes you back to your home country, or but you're studying under a U.S. faculty advisor, that's totally okay. You're totally eligible to apply. And then the very last question we'll get to today is there an opportunity for SPREP to be part of the consortium of the training hub? SPREP can bring in the Pacific Climate Change Center and the Climate Change Focal Points and NMHSS. So I think it's probably too late for another partner to join as a co-equal partner of the training hub, but SPREP is definitely a partner that we all have in the Pacific region. So SPREP will definitely be involved in all of these efforts in some way, shape, or form. Katy, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have the networks as well, and they've been leading on some of the OA projects in the Pacific. So certainly a space for SPREP to be part of, you know, the work of the hub. Yeah.
Great. All right. So we are a little bit over time, so that's all the time that we have today. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank all of our panelists. As you could tell, we're all really enthusiastic about this project. So if you were inspired from our conversation today, please contact us on the OA Info Exchange, or please send us an email. You could reach most of us through the GoOn website as well. And keep an eye out for the trainings, the Master's Fellowship, and all the other exciting efforts that we've been up to. Before we go, I'm just going to show the video from the High CO2 Meeting Steering Committee. It's a little promo video that announces something that we could all look forward to a year from now, hopefully joining in person in Lima for this big international conference. And then after that, the session will end. So thank you all so much for joining today. And without any further ado, I'll show this video.